It is definitely a 4 shots of espresso kind of morning. Welcome to another video. I'm Maria. If you don't know me, I love making videos about knitwear and all things knitting. And today I thought I'd dive into a topic that I, as a mom of a young toddler, need to know a lot more about, and that is stain removal from knitwear. If you have a kid, you know that stains are part of your daily routine. And my motto has always been, bless the mess that made the memories. But with hand knits, you can't just fling things into the wash, put any kind of stain remover on it and hope for the best. Woolen fabrics are a lot more delicate. So I feel like there is a lot to learn about stain removal from wool. So what I have planned today is think of the most common stains that I need to remove from our garments, and then go online, do a bit of research, and maybe find the most common, like 3 or 4 methods of removing stains from knits, and then putting them to the test. So testing them on all the stains and seeing which ones are removed best by what method. I am really excited to try this. I need to constantly remove stains, and it would make me feel a bit less precious about my hand knits if I know that any stain there is, I can get it out. I'm going to take you along kind of vlog style, and we're just going to experiment and we're just going to see what happens. First up, I think I need to sit down and have a quick think about the most common stains that we get in our garments. So let's go do that. Right off the bat, I know that I'm always having to get tomato stains out. So that's the first one that's going on the list. And then berries are a real big thing year round. If they're not fresh in the supermarket, we're getting them frozen, putting them on pancakes, porridge, everything. Something that's not as common, but is just really tricky to get out of any garment is any form of grease, oil, fat, butter, these kind of things. So I think I'm also going to include this on the list simply because it is so hard to get out. And then I know for myself, I struggle with getting makeup off of my knits. Whether it's hats that I'm putting on and that get bronzer on it from the forehead, or I've got a jumper that has a white collar and that always has makeup stains on it. So makeup is a big one for me to try and get out as well. And I think lastly, simply because it is, again, really hard to remove, coffee. I think coffee stains are common and tricky. So let's put that on the list too. Yeah, 5 things. Right, now that we have our list, let's just go online, do a little bit of research and see what the most common methods for stain removal on woolen items are. Right, so let's type in stain removal from hand knitted garments and see what we find. Okay, so first up is Google AI. Let's see what it says. To effectively remove stains from hand-knitted garments, start by blotting the stain with a clean cloth, and then try a solution of warm water and mild detergent specifically designed for wool. Well, that seems obvious. Ooh, we've got some stain-specific treatments listed here. For oil and grease, try dish soap diluted with water, allow it to sit, and then gently dab with a clean cloth. That is actually what I do when I have any kind of t-shirts or jumpers made of cotton or sometimes polyesters. I put a little bit of dish soap on it, rub it into the stain, and then put it in the washing machine, and that almost always gets it out. So I think that is a good tip that I would also like to try. Here are some important considerations. Test on an inconspicuous area. Well, we always have our gauge swatch. If you still have it around, always use that to test whether the stain remover that you want to use is actually going to work on the wool, and if just to make sure that it's not going to lift the dye or lead to any bleeding or weird discolorations. That is always a good tip that I've learned. Avoid rubbing, that's clear. Don't use any bleach, and for stubborn stains you should seek professional help. Well, we're trying to not get to that point. Oh, the Wool Mark Company. The best way to remove stains from wool clothes. Okay, so first up is again a grease stain. Use a hot iron over layers of tissue to soak up the excess oil and grease. Although we cannot use really hot irons on top of our hand knits because wool is susceptible to heat. If required, soak a lint-free cloth in a proprietary grease remover or white spirit. Gently dab the area, blotting the solvent as much as possible. Repeat if necessary, then allow to dry. So it's really talking about two things with which you could remove grease. One is a tissue and then an iron, maybe a warm iron on top of it, to try and lift the grease and let it soak into the tissue, which I think is a good tip. But the second one is using white spirit or something to specifically dissolve grease and then dab that off and using a wool mark approved detergent to then just wash your garment. That doesn't sound too bad either. So what about anything like berry juice or tomato juice? This is about removing eggs, red wine, fruit juices. I think that's what we're going to look at. Rinse as much of the drink out as possible with clean water and then apply a diluted solution of Woolmark approved detergent in tepid water. So that's not... If the stain persists, create a mixture of 3 parts of surgical spirit or rubbing alcohol plus 1 part of cold water. Never heard of that before. We could try that. Ooh, there's a separate section on coffee. How to remove black coffee stains. Ideally, immediately rinse under cold running water to dilute the coffee. I've heard of that before. And if I do get one, I try to rinse it from the back out to the front so that I don't push anything further into the fibers. If the stain has dried, then make a mixture of half a teaspoon of baking soda with 1 cup of tepid water. Soak a lint-free cloth in the solution and lightly dab the stained area. Press gently with an absorbent cloth. If the stain persists, apply a solution of 3 parts of surgical spirit plus 1 part of cold water. So that tip is coming up again, so I definitely think we should try it. But it's also talking about 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda with a cup of tepid water, which hasn't come up. And again, baking soda is probably in everybody's cupboard already, so I think we should add it and just see. Okay, removing lipstick, makeup, or shoe polish stains. Right, gently dab from the edge of the stain with a cloth soaked with white spirit or spot cleaning spray. Now that is actually something that I have tried before and that does work. I'm loving these Oxy sprays that you can get kind of from any supermarket brand or Vanish if you want. They work really well on wool and they do lift makeup stains. So I've tried that before, that works, and I definitely want to try this again here to see how it performs, maybe in comparison to the white spirit soaked cloth. Okay. Oh, actually, it's talking about grass and dirt as well, which I haven't included in my list. Emma isn't particularly bad with getting any of like grass or dirt stains on her clothing, but I suppose it would be a good idea to add that in. So maybe we should just add grass and dirt as a 6th category. Right, they are saying to carefully apply some mild tablet soap to the stained area. What's tablet soap? And then gently dab with a lint-free cloth soaked in surgical spirit or rubbing alcohol. I'm not entirely sure what tablet soap is, but maybe I could just use dish soap and then rubbing alcohol. Right, tomatoes. Tomatoes isn't listed here. So let's have another look at that. So for tomato stains, Google's AI is pulling out some tips again and listing them. It says start by rinsing the stain with cold water, then blot with a clean cloth. Apply a mixture of equal parts of white vinegar and water and let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes and then blot again. And then it says to create a paste of baking soda and water and apply that to the stain and let it sit for another 10 minutes. And then rinse thoroughly with cold water and wash as usual. So that seems quite a lot of effort, to be honest. Further down, it's also talking about avoiding rubbing and hot water. I think we all know that wool doesn't really go well with any high amount of friction, which is why we don't put it in the washing machine. It's also not dealing well with hot water, so we have to avoid any of that. It talks about using dish soap, which, like I said, I think is always a good first point to try. Talking about oxy cleaners again, which are really, really great. And then it says sunlight. Exposing the garment to sunlight after washing can help further fade a stain. I think these are all really good tips. So for tomatoes, I mean, we could try the baking soda and vinegar mixture, although it seems quite involved, but we'll try. The other idea would be maybe an oxy cleaner and sunlight. So I think we're just going to see which one works the best for tomato stains. But I think that's all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, so we have a list of things to try for all of our different stain types. Now, what I need to do is figure out what things I have at home and what things I need to go out and buy. And then we need to find a garment to get dirty and try everything out. Right, I finally gathered all the supplies. I had to go out and buy white spirit, which I found in my local supermarket in the kind of homeware DIY section. And then I also had to go and get the surgical spirit or rowing alcohol. That was a bit trickier to find. I had to go to 3 different pharmacies, but the third one finally had it. Both of these things were about £3.50, £4, so not too bad. I already had some oxy spray cleaner at home. I also have bicarbonate of soda, washing up liquid, and vinegar. So all of these things are set out, ready for me to go. I got a cloth that I don't mind getting dirty or spoiled. And I've gathered all our stains. So I've got some blackberries and raspberries, ketchup, rapeseed oil, some coffee from this morning, and some dirt, as well as a bit of bronzer for our makeup. Now, when it comes to what we're going to stain, obviously we need a knitted fabric. And I found the very first knitted sample of a kid sweater that I designed. It's called the bébé sweater. And I didn't like how the neckline turned out, but it's actually perfect for what we've got planned today because it has a white section and it has a dark blue section. So you can see how the stains act on the different kinds of fabric and how the removers act on different colored fabrics. And it's knitted with Drops Lima, which is an alpaca wool blend. So I think loads of jumpers that you guys have at home will be knitted by some kind of wool. So I think it will serve as a really good example. But what I think I'll have to do is cut it up a little bit so that I can use the front section, the back section, and the arms for separate experiments. Now, in order to keep track of everything, I've made myself a handy little guide, a little list of all the things that I want to try and all the stains that we have. I think what I'll start doing is just applying the stains, and I think I'll leave them to sit for a little bit because not everybody always has time to immediately rinse out a stain. So what I'm going to do now is I'll add the stains, then I'll have my lunch, and then after about 30-45 minutes I'll come back and we'll start using the removers and seeing what happens. Now let's go ahead and start staining. So I think all of this will be method 2 and all of this here will be method 1. So all of them will get the same stains applied now. And I'm gonna make sure to apply them sort of to the dark bit and to the light bit as well. Right, so our 40 minutes are up and everything looks a bit crusty. Okay, we're gonna try and blot everything off and then we're just going to go through the different methods of removal and see what happens. And lucky for me, it's a sunny day today, so I can also leave the sleeve pieces out in the sun for a little bit. And then at the end of it, I'll wash everything with my normal wool wash, the Euclid one, and just see what it looks like tomorrow, I think, once it had a chance to dry. And then we'll do the big reveal tomorrow. But let's get into each of the different methods. So I'll turn you around and then we can start removing these stains, hopefully. All right, so this front piece here will be method 1 for all of the stains. And at first I'll just start to blot some of these away. So method 1 for the tomato stain is adding some water and white vinegar in equal parts to the stain for 10 minutes and then blot it off. And then we're going to add the paste of baking soda and water for 10 minutes and then wash it. Since it's equal parts, I'm just going to take one measure, which is now half a tablespoon of cold water. And then I'm going to add the same amount of white vinegar. So we're going to add it onto the dark section here. And I'm just going to really soak it. More is more in this case. And then I'm going to add it to the lighter section here. There we go. So that is definitely completely soaking in now. So while that is setting in, I'm going to move on to the oil stain, which is here and here. And we're going to try dish soap on the wetted stain and then blot it and later rinse. I'm going to get it wet a little bit. Oops. And now I'm going to add a little bit of washing up liquid, dish soap. So I'm just going to do like one little pump to each of these. And then I'm going to use my finger to just gently rub it in. Remember, this is wool. We don't want to do any heavy rubbing. We don't want to have lots of friction. So I'm just going to gently rub it into the fibers with my finger. Right, so that is now going to sit here for a little bit. The makeup down here is just going to get the Oxy cleaner for method 1. So I've just got some generic Oxy Action cleaner from a supermarket here in the UK, but you can get this from Vanish and loads of other brands. I think it's quite a generic product. So just trying to get this onto that stain. Okay, proper soak it. All right, we're also going to leave that. Now for the coffee stain, we need 1 cup of tepid water and half a teaspoon of baking soda. So that is not much at all. Give it a little stir. I'm just going to soak my cloth in it. And so here we go. Ooh, that's already doing something. And now we're going to move on to the dirt. We're just going to wet this dirt stain again with a bit of water. And then apply our dish soap again. And then I'm going to rub it in again with my finger. And lastly, we need to take... Okay, so that was just a timer for the ketchup stains here. So we need to blot this off now and then apply a baking soda and water paste. Okay, 10 minutes for that. I'm going to get on with the berries, and for that we'll need to make a mixture of 3 parts of Surgica spirit with 1 part of water. 1, 2, 3 parts of that and 1 part of cold water. This smells funny. And while the berry solution is working its magic, I'm going to start to blot off some of these other things and then prepare everything for the bath. All the stains have been treated with method 1. Everything has been blotted that's supposed to be blotted. I've just prepared the bath for everything here, and I'm just going to plop it in and let it soak. So this is warm water with my Euclid wool wash, and that can soak in here now for a little bit. And I think maybe I'll just give each stain a little rub after a while with my finger again, quite gently, just to kind of help and encourage anything else to come out. And we get on with method 2. Like before, I'll start by blotting off some of the excess, and then I'll apply the second method. So the tomato is going to get the Oxy cleaner and sunlight, same for the berries. We'll just dab, dab, dab. And now we're just going to apply the Oxy cleaner. And we'll leave that to sit for 5 or maybe 10 minutes. And now let's get on with these stains. Okay, so now we are busting out the white spirit, and that's gonna be really stinky. So already that is not my favorite thing to try. It says to put the white spirit on a cloth and then blot, and then air dry and only then wash. So we're gonna do that with the oil, makeup, and with the coffee. And we're just going to pat. And I'll dab, dab, dab. It definitely is coming out, but very slowly. Very, very slowly. Okay, right. I think I'm done. It's so stinky. And then we're going to move on to the last one, which is the dirt, which is getting the surgical spirit treatment. So same principle, we're just going to apply the surgical spirit onto a cloth and then dab it onto the stain. So don't apply this surgical spirit directly onto the stain. Oh, I've actually got a cut, so this is hurting. Oh. I'm going to add these to the bath, and for anything with the white spirit and rubbing alcohol or surgical spirit, that has to air dry and only then I can wash it. So this will sit in a corner for a while, air out, and then I'll wash it later tonight. So let's add these to the wash. Just going to gently rub all the areas with the stain on them. Very promising on the oxy action here. Look at that. Okay, right. So all of these stains have been rubbed very gently now, and I'm still going to leave this for another, I think, 20 minutes. And then I'm going to gently get out the excess water and lay it flat on a towel to dry. Okay, the results are in. It's the next day, everything is dried, and I had a really good look at all the stains to see what methods actually worked and which ones didn't work so well. So let's go and get into it. So I'll go through everything by stain category, and then I'll talk about the individual stain removers that we used, how I like them. I also thought I would rate each stain remover and give it a number out of 5 to see how well it performed, where 0 is the lowest and 5 is the highest. And I'm going to give you the positives and the negatives for each stain remover as well. The first stain that we had was tomatoes, and with method 1 I used a mixture of water and white vinegar in equal parts, put that onto the stain and let that sit for 10 minutes. And then I blotted that off and used a paste of baking soda or bicarbonate of soda if you're in the UK, and water, and put that paste onto the stain and let that sit for another 10 minutes. And then I took off the baking soda, shook off as much as I could, and we washed it. That method sort of worked. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because the stain is still visible, so I think it needs a repeat treatment. What I liked about this method is that the stuff you need, you probably already have in your cupboard, so you don't need to go out and buy specific things. But what I didn't like about it is that it was quite messy and it was a bit of a faff because you have to do 2 separate steps and you have to wait in between, you have to come back and then do the next step. And the baking soda paste was just a little bit messy to remove. So it wasn't my favorite technique, and I think it needs a repeat. So kind of meh. So the second method that we tried for the tomato stains was the Oxy spray cleaner with some sunlight. That worked a treat. You could literally see how it's lifting the stain as the foam was kind of vanishing. The stain was vanishing with it. And by the time I had to put it in the bath, it was almost completely gone. And then when I laid it out flat to dry in the sun, I couldn't even see the stain anymore. So I think even without the sunlight, it would have worked wonderfully. I love that this is so easy to use. It doesn't smell weirdly. It doesn't leave any residue. It's not messy. All you literally have to do is spray it on the stain, wait a little bit, and then wash your garment as you normally would. So the ease of use is really good. And like I said, no smell or residue. It didn't distort the wool. It also didn't change the color on the blue, which I really found fascinating. So I think it's color safe as well. Absolute 5 out of 5. And you can't see the stain at all. The only negative that I could think of is that you have to probably go out and buy it. So maybe nothing that you have already in your cupboards. But here in the UK, every supermarket brand makes one of them. I've had some from Asda, I've had some from Tesco, I've tried the Vanish brand, they're all really good. So I think it's something that will probably be in your local supermarket as well. It's quite easy to find. So yeah, the Oxy spray cleaner worked an absolute treat. Next up, we tested berry juices. So if you remember, I used a blackberry and a fresh raspberry to recreate the stains. So for the first method, I used 3 parts of surgical spirit or rubbing alcohol and 1 part of cold water. And I just used this mixture straight on the stain. So I kind of doused the stain in the mixture and then washed it as normal. Now this method worked really quite well. There's no residue of the berry stain left. It didn't change the color on the blue. It didn't leave a yellowy rim or anything on the white. So the fabric kind of looks as good as new. But I still just gave it a 3 out of 5 because you can smell the rubbing alcohol in the fabric still. So if you hold it up to your nose, it's quite prominent. And I think if you would wear it, you would smell it the entire time if it's sort of close up on the yoke maybe. So that is a big, big, big negative for me. The other negative that I have is that it was really quite hard to find. I had to go to 3 different drugstores or pharmacies to find it. By the way, as I was applying it neat onto one of the other stains, it did sting me because I had a little cut. So that's just like a little side note. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite. There was quite a strong smell associated with it and it was really hard to find. On the positive side though, it worked quite well and it was really easy to do. The second method that I tried for the berries was again the OxyCleaner and the sunlight. And that was just, again, 5 out of 5, the best method. Like I said, for the tomato stains, the OxyCleaner is just so easy to use. It's easy to get a hold of. There's no smell. Everything feels and looks just like it did before the stain happened. So OxyCleaner wins for me in this race. The third stain that we did was oil. So I used rapeseed oil because it has this lovely deep yellowy color so that I would leave a really good stain. So the first method that I tried here was a little bit of dish soap on the wetted stain. So I just used a little bit of water to get the stain wet. And then I applied 1 little drop of dish soap. So whatever you have, Fairy, Dawn, whatever you call it, just right on the stain. And then I rubbed it in very gently with my finger. Just made sure that the dish soap goes into all the little fibers. And then I let it sit probably for about 10 minutes just because I was dealing with the other stains, and then washed it as normal. And 5 out of 5, it worked so well. It completely lifted the oil, which I was very shocked by. I would not have thought that it would work so well. I really only have positive things to say about it because it's something that you will 100% have in your house already. So very easy to use and very readily available. So absolutely love the dish soap trick. The second method that we tried for the oil was just plain white spirit on a cloth, and then we dabbed the stain with it and repeated as necessary, let the stain air dry, and then we washed it as normal. Now this was by far the absolute worst thing that I've tried. The white spirit has such an intense, disgusting, sickening smell to it. I could not stand it. It was awful. So whatever you do, don't grab white spirit. It didn't lift the stain and it smelled awful as you were applying it. The smell is sitting in the fiber now. I mean, absolute 0 out of 5, wouldn't recommend. There's no positives to this whatsoever. It was just awful. The fourth stain that we tried was makeup, and I used bronzer that I had because it's quite dark and poignant. And I know that, for example, my hat's got a bit of bronzer stains where the brim sits. For method 1, we tried the OxyCleaner, and this time it didn't work. The stain is still quite visible. I think it lifted it to a degree, but it's still quite visible, which really surprised me because I've used OxyCleaner on makeup stains before. They weren't straight up, dip your finger in bronzer and smear it across kind of stains, but they were residue from when I put something on over my head, or like I said, when I wear a hat and have the brim touch my forehead. And those stains were always lifted by the OxyCleaner, so I was actually really surprised that it only sort of faded the stain. So yeah, I kind of just gave it a 1 out of 5 because it really didn't do much except for fading the stain. The second method that I tried with the makeup was the white spirit. Again, neat on a cloth, blotting the stain, letting it air dry and then washing it. And same criticism as before with the oil. It just didn't do anything. I think it actually changed the color to a more kind of orangey stain. So it's like even more prominent. So again, 0 out of 5 because the white spirit is just awful to work with. Now the fifth staining that we tried was coffee. And for method 1, I've used a mixture of 1 teaspoon of baking soda or bicarbonate of soda in 1 cup of tepid water. And then I mixed this to dissolve the baking soda, and I soaked a cloth in it and then dabbed the stain with it. Now this didn't quite work. The stain is still fairly visible. You can still see a yellow patch, but it did lift it a little bit and fade it. So I gave this method a 2 out of 5. The good thing is that, again, it's probably something that you already have available, so quite easy to do, but the negatives is that it still needs a repeat or maybe something else to try and fade it with. The second method that we tried with the coffee was, again, the white spirit. I'm not going to repeat myself. It was just awful. It didn't do anything and I don't recommend it. And the last thing, which I kind of added last minute to the list, was dirt. So I just used dirt from my plants, made it wet, and then rubbed it into the fabric as if it was dirt from outside. The first method that I tried to get rid of it was the dish soap again on the wet stain. This time it actually didn't work so well. I kind of still see a bit of residue and a bit of a hue of the darker stain. So I think it needs a repeat, but it did lift the majority of it. So I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. The positives are the same as before. It's really easily available. You can do it really easily, kind of no harm, no smell. But the negatives is that it really needs a repeat. And method 2 that we used for this stain was surgical spirit, knead on a dry cloth, and then dab the stain with it. That didn't work all that well because you can still see a stain and the smell again is in the fabric. So I gave it a 1 out of 5 because it did lift some of it, but we'll have to repeat it and the smell is just so bad. So that's the roundup of all the stains and methods that I tried. Now, who is the winner? To me, it's clearly the Oxy spray and the dish soap. They are the easiest to work with. They are really easy to get hold of. They did the most impressive lifting. The tomato stain, the berry stain, completely gone with the Oxy action. The dish soap completely removed the oil. So I was really impressed by it. The only bit where I was a bit let down by the Oxy cleaner was the makeup. But overall, I like these methods the most and I'll definitely try them for the next stain that I need to lift. I don't even think I need to say it, but the absolute worst of the lot was the white spirit. The smell is just deafening. I absolutely hated it. Just don't try the white spirit. The smell will stay and stick in your fabric. I just can't complain about it enough. So that's the little roundup of all the methods that I've tried. And just to reiterate for you, here's the summary of what worked best on what stain. Tomato stains, Oxy cleaner and sunlight. But to be honest, you really only need the Oxy cleaner. It lifted the entire thing already. Berries, same thing. The Oxy cleaner did the best work. For the oil, dish soap won by a mile. Now for the makeup, coffee and dirt, there was nothing that we tested which actually lifted the stains and gave a satisfying result. So there's a lot more digging that I need to do to find out what best lifts makeup, coffee and dirt. Right, well, there we have it. Those are the things that best lifted some of the maybe common stains that you get in your garments. Let me know if you want to see a part 2 because I'm now really intrigued to see what lifts coffee, makeup and dirt and if we can find anything at all to lift these things. Or if you have any other common things that create stains in your woolen garments that you want me to try and lift. I really enjoyed making this video. It was so much fun. Thank you for spending some time with me, and if you want to support my channel, the best thing that you can do is just click on the next video that YouTube suggests to you because it always lets them know that you like what I do, pushes my content up so that more people can see it. I hope to see you guys soon in the next video. Enjoy the rest of your day and thanks for watching.